Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT, Kevin and Son, featuring the people you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author, an award-winning author, mentor, mindset coach. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences, perspectives, using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Now, whatever the objective is, successful people like my guest today, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that not only enhances theirs, but in many times, they pour into others. Our guest today is one heartbeat away from the next superstar recording artist. He is the co-founder and VP of A&R of Contra Worldwide Recording, representing talents in his past or present like Ludacris, Young Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, E40, and many more. Today, our guest will be talking about the music and the music game itself. We'll talk about how he got started. We'll talk about the puppet master. That's the people that put the money behind the music. And if you stay around long enough, you will learn the impact on our community and the missing pieces of how music affects our physical, emotional, aspirational, perception of cerebral and ethereal, and the effect it has on our community. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show, Mr. Aaron Eubanks, Star Maker. Part 2, how you doing?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing, man? It's a pleasure to be back. Everything is good. Again, I'm happy to be here and able to discuss these some of the topics with you that are revolving around our industry. So pretty cool.
Man, I'm going to tell you, we've had, and I'm going to tell my listeners, this is going to be a unscripted, uncut conversation, the conversation that we kind of have just between the two of us, talking about the things that goes on in the world. We may touch a little bit about P. Diddy and how I view and the way there's a system that's against our Black artists that's not held to a standard of the same as other recording artists or entertainers. We'll definitely talk about the direction of music. I'm still kind of curious why we don't have a summertime hit. I miss Will Smith in the movie theater and also in the music part. We'll talk about all that. But first of all, if you don't mind, I gave a very small window view of your impact and your history of music. If you, just for our listeners that didn't see part 1 of this, we're doing part 2. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Eubanks? I'm going to call you Aaron. I'm getting all formal like, we don't know each other.
Yeah. You don't have to do that. I'll give you the shorter version, but no, my lineage in this is tied into so many great mentors that I had before me. I went to school in Virginia, and I went to school for communications. I always had a passion for creating, but music wasn't necessarily like the thing that I saw myself doing. But the way everything evolved was, I was around so many people that were having success. And this is in the late 90s, around that time. My biggest influence would come directly from a member of my very own family, my circle, who was my uncle. His name is Hak Islam. He's responsible for Dru Hill, Maya. He made his legacy and his name out of the DMV area. For those of you that are out there that understand some of those names, Maya, Dru Hill, Sisqó, Pure Soul, it's a number of artists. I also have strong ties into Philly International. That was actually where I got my first start at as an artist and as a producer and as a writer. So I've to start off with, my journey probably begins right around the end of high school, heading into college. I talk to a lot of kids and I'm like, it's important to really know what you want to do when you get to, high school and even beyond. But stay stay broad, stay open-minded, because again, with me, I never imagined that, I would have a career, in music. So once I kind of, received the proper mentorship, I got my feet wet and learning the business, learning artists, learning how to find artists, learning writing, song structure, producing, everything. Over the course of probably about maybe 3 to 4 year crash course in everything. I felt like it was something that I wanted to do for the long term. I wanted to take it to a whole nother level. And again, it's just opportunity, man. It was just me putting myself in front of the path of success. And through that, I met, people that would eventually help to get me, further into the business. And I was willing to do whatever. Like, I was willing to, to be a producer, a writer, an artist. I did everything. And eventually, I learned enough. I gained enough experience. I would say over the first 5 to 10 years that I was like, all right, I think this is what I want to do in some capacity for the rest of my life. So that's really it. I could go into more detail, but that's pretty much how I got to where we are today, is just through relationships, mentorship, and just getting out there.
And see, and ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I want to share this story is because we've had a lot of personal conversations, not only about life itself, the music industry, what's going on with certain artists and so forth. But I also want to say, when I named the show Talking Wit, Kevin and Son, wit is basically because I got a good sense of humor. But the reason why I had Kevin and Son is because during COVID, I had a son that was my co-host. Now he's gone back to work. But I also wanted to share with people. I wanted to paint a different picture. And I think this picture overlaps with the picture that you're seeing right now. You got two very respected Black men in the industry now on media that we control. And the other thing is that I see this man every single day, and he is an active, involved father and a loyal husband. He's a pillar to the community. So I'm saying the picture that we have from our entertainers that happen to be Black is not the picture that you're going to see today. All right. This is the real picture of people that care about the community, that are invested in their family, that have a certain level of integrity and purpose in what they do. So if you think about the conversation, and when we talk about entertainers, Black entertainers, many of our household talent, they all now have asterisks behind their name. The music has turned from being an emotional or a personal expression of the community to fast money and stories that now are atop the Fox News as the criminal minds. R. Kelly, Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is no longer the father of television. Will Smith is no longer the big box office draw, which I think he still is, because of whatever he was going through between him and Chris Rock, which I still think that is between him and Chris Rock. My favorite song is, I always thought was by Seal, turned out to be an R. Kelly song. I Can Fly, from Space Jam with Michael Jordan. Do I stop playing his music? Do I stop believing in the lyrics? Or do I condemn him for the same thing that Hugh Hefner did and many rock stars, both country, hard rock, hip hop, and everything else, are guilty of? The one thing, and I brought this up to Aaron, is that why is it that we've never seen Hugh Hefner on trial? When I pretty much say, if you peel back the layers, and I'm not saying R. Kelly is totally innocent, I will probably say the people that brought their children to these events that he's being accused of should be that. When I look at the fact that P. Diddy is in the situation that he's in, and I know that we're quick to point fingers, but is he really being put on trial for what we say that he has done, and not saying that he's innocent? Or is he being set up as an example of who's rich and who's really wealthy? Because, stories have it, don't know if it's to be true, but I don't know if it's a lie either, that he was building a militia. Stories have it that P. Diddy was, He went against the person that was paying his bills, his liquor company. I don't know the truth, but I do know there is a disparity in the way that we criminalize our Black entertainers versus the way we promote drugs, sex, and rock and roll amongst our other entertainers. Am I wrong in this thinking? Or, I mean, please correct me. You're the expert here. I'm just fan.
No, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I think that, we have to go back to, like, if we focus on hip hop, right? If we focus on that medium, that genre, the origins, no, first of all, no one ever thought hip hop would work, number one, right? And if we travel back to, again, the origins of it, hip hop was used as a vehicle to tell stories about what was happening in places that most of America, most people didn't have access to.
It's called marginalized community. Marginalized
underprivileged, marginalized, right? The essence of what we did as street poets or rappers or those types of that level of entertainment, it was strictly used for that and that only, right? No one knew. I remember I heard LL Cool J give this speech, or analogy, or not an analogy, but this sort of speech to some of the younger artists that were coming up, that exist today. No one knew if this thing we call hip hop would work. So there was no reward attached to it. There was no, hey, if you do this, you're going to make $1 million. If you talk about this, you're going to make $1 million, right? It was pure. And it was used as a vehicle strictly for us to tell our stories, right? About what was happening in the neighborhoods. And some of those stories were so compelling because they were filled with solutions, right? Some of those things weren't necessarily obtainable, but it gave us hope because it was somebody that was able to articulate things the way we needed to see them, right? And we could visualize what that individual was saying. The art form became more aspirational as time went on because the stories went from the struggle to, again, the solution that, hey, there's a way out too. There's certain artists that along the way delivered, what we call in the hip hop community gems, right? They spoke of things that, they made us conscious. A lot of us did not have knowledge itself. We didn't realize certain things. The music helped us understand it, right? Some of us didn't know where we came from. They didn't know their history, right? They didn't know about Africa. They didn't know about a lot of things. And the music kind of was used as this tool, this bridge to bring things together, okay? So the power in it from the very beginning, right, was extraordinary because it could reach so many people. But then for our youth, for the kids that, were coming up like myself at the time, right, what you hearing is these positive affirmations. You hearing the power in, when I first listened to KRS-One, when I first listen to Tribe Called Quest, when I first listened to, several other artists who spoke about, not only the ills of the world, but also they also gave you hope. They gave you knowledge, and you were able to carry that throughout the day. When you listen to Public Enemy, it was that, right? And again, still we talking about mid 80s. No one knew that it would work. No one knew that 30, 40, 50 years later, you could be, making millions of dollars off this thing. You could be a billionaire off this thing.
But see, that's the beauty of that story there. No one was doing it for the money.
Right.
No one was doing it. Gil Scott Herring was not talking about the plight of the black man. It's the same way that,
Right.
our ancestors communicated through folk music and so forth or whatever. When this music came, it was an extension of a story that was continued to be told of a person's
Right.
story that no one wanted to hear. And when you say it like that, I'm starting to look at, the way when school's out for the summer and we're sitting down there because the public school is not open or whatever the case may be, and we should take the nozzle off the fire hose and dance through that to cool off or whatever. When we used to go down to the Eubanks house and sit in the back, and your mom and your pops would open up the grill, get sodas down, and fed the whole neighborhood, and we would listen to stories of how it came about. That's where our music came from. And then all of a sudden,
so,
and I'll say it.
Right. So
go ahead.
We could pick it up from there. All of a sudden, because it ties in. I'm gonna tie this into your original question, which is, the sort of like the contrast and comparison between, them and us or whatever, right? All of the sudden, all right. So, Kat, this for everyone watching now. This is when you get uncomfortable, right? It's when we ruffle a few feathers, right? All of a sudden, there was a certain group of people that realized that wait a minute, there's money to be made in this thing, right? And
wait, let me stop you from there, because you're sugarcoating exactly where it is right now. There's a certain culture of Jewish people for profit. And it's not a blanket for all Jewish people. There was an opportunity right there.
Right.
And they seized the opportunity.
Right. But and the way it was done was very strategic, because again, this is something that very few people still knew about, right? And when I say know about, I'm talking about the creation, the creative of it, the marketing of it, the impact, right? The channelizing. It was only a few people, and that was us. If you came, you had to really come from the culture, if you will, to know exactly the purities of it. And when we turn the camera back, or the lens back to us, this is where the term, sell out or sold out started to come from. Because something that was so secretive to us, something that had a bunch of creative mystique, we started to give that recipe away. We started to give that, as we call it, the sauce. We started to give that sauce away to those that didn't have a place in this in the beginning. And we said, for a certain amount of, money or fame, or those things that aspirationally, remember what I said, the music became aspirational. So instead of you being the artist that says, one day I long to have, a big house and a Mercedes Benz in the driveway, there was somebody willing suddenly to say, you know what, you can have that. I have no problem with, giving that to you. But for that, I want a piece of this thing, right? I want a piece of this thing you call hip hop or rap or whatever. And not just a piece, like, I want to own it and make money with this. And that's when contracts started to come in. And that's when the business, because again, when you do something from the heart, from the soul, you're not really thinking of, the legal ramifications or things like that. And these bad, the music and the music industry and hip hop as a whole started to change, because now you have real executives in this thing who
let me stop you there. Let me stop you there, because this is what happens when you go into business and you don't know business, and you're talking to business people that are all about making money, and they have a whole system. So you, as a talent, when you're talking to someone in business, they say, well, Aaron, what do you need? And Aaron, all you want to do is a way out in the neighborhood, a way to provide your family. Is that all you need, Aaron? All right, I'm going to provide you that. And in exchange, what I need for you to do is do da, 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 and so forth. And I will give you a little bit of this. But because of our position, we need to be in this position and so forth. So all of a sudden we have these phantom conversations based on we're really taking care of you. But who are we really taking care of? Now let me pick up the story from there, because let you take over from there. I interrupted because I just want to make sure that people.
No. You're absolutely correct, because we were willing to forego and leverage our creativity in exchange for monetization, in exchange for what we thought at the time was fair, good business, the way out, the way to feed your family, right? And when see, the other thing that happened, right? I want to stay in this, and for those that are listening, this is around like late 80s, early 90s. And we're still on the subject of hip hop. Hip hop during that time was very conscious. What I mean is that there was a, it was starting to be used as a tool to teach, not destruct, but to build, not destroy, but to build. It was pure, right? And because, again, those on the outside, it was looked at as a fad. It was like, oh, that'll never work. Let them keep, talking. But what happened was the youth started to elevate from that. And there were moments in time where our voice was so strong, right? It almost became dangerous. It almost, for those that were on the opposite side. Not everybody liked to see that. It became something also that was starting to seep into so many different households of, and this is before the gangster rap movement. We'll get there. This is just we're talking about, there was a stage of consciousness.
Wait a minute. Did you just say that it was seep into other neighborhoods and environments? You're trying to say our music started to diversify?
It started to diversify.
Oh, yes. Man, that could create a whole problem.
And right. And which it kind of did, right? But it started to diversify.
It kind of did. Kind of did. You ever hear what's a 6 Mile? With Eminem?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It kind of did. It did.
Oh yeah. And we'll get into that. But again, for your listeners and your watchers, again, we kind of like in the late 80s, right? But I want you to understand that this is becoming one of the more powerful forms of media that exists during that time.
So let me pick up here, and so that way our listeners know, the conversation that goes on in my head is, while hip hop has been a powerful force of self-expression, social commentary, and cultural innovations, it has also been criticized as being having some negative aspects. We glorified violence. That's the reason why gangster rap came out. Misogynistic behavior, sexual objectivity. We promoted the use of and glorified drug use, excessive materialism and flexing, lack of lyrical depth and originality, commercialized the lack of integrity of our original message, which my guest is talking about, and we sacrificed mainstream appeal for profit. The negative, cut off your phone, you're vibrating. The negative influence, is that my phone or your phone? That's yours. The negative influence on our youth and their behavior. And also the music has damaged a group of people, regular people, brothers and sisters that just happen to have a different side of love, who created homophobic. So let's go back and let's pick up with our guests on, this is going to blend over to everything that I just outlined for you. So we're talking about the culture and the way that hip hop music and the music industry either blended in or it now collides. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right. So the culture itself, again, as I was stating before, was still in a state of purity. It was still in a state of almost experimenting or experimentation. We were, it was slowly being commercialized. But to get to that turning point that I think is so critical in hip hop is and it's one of those things that you just touched on is, I guess, when the music went from being conscious, and having more of a positive message to it being a little bit more aggressive and pointing out certain things that happen in society. The funny part is, even during that phase that we talk about, now we're into like the early 90s, right? 90, 91, around there. History repeats itself. And what music did and what hip hop did is, again, it became the voice, or it became a vessel for a group of people that felt that they had no voice, right? The rules to hip hop will always be similar to that of Black culture, is that if we don't feel as though that, when our voice isn't heard, we look to get our voice heard. Within this stage of hip hop that we're talking about now, within music we're talking about now, we're talking about it becoming more so for the first time, we're hearing from these brothers out on the West Coast about the term police brutality. And it was something that my generation personally, millennials, or maybe slightly thereafter, if you were born in like the early 80s, late 70s, whatever, that was the first time you really heard someone speak out about police brutality and how the young Black youth was being treated, and it was in music. And that those brothers were NWA. But during that time, their way of delivering that message would be, years later would become debatable. Like we kind of look back now and like, was that truly the birth of this sort of period of not just, gangster rap as they called it, but some of the things that portal sort of opened up, the treatment of women, the use of the N-word, all these things that.
I said, which I hate. I hate, right, the N-word.
All of these things that it's almost like the beauty and the ugliness of it, came out of that period. But it was so impactful. And I talked to some of the hip hop historians, or even music historians. I've actually had this conversation with Kenny Gamble, and several others, that if you take away that, if you take away NWA, you take away what they did, you take away that period, what does that do for us moving forward? Do we actually move forward? Does music become stagnant? Does, because a lot of people, look at it and say, oh yeah, it was, here these Black guys, and they come and they, they're making these very aggressive, misogynistic songs sometimes, or they're talking about things that might be taboo, but that bled into a lot of different places within society, within life, because now we talk about what's starting to be filtered into these households, right? Okay, audience, you ready again? Here's this another point. So now we got the young white kids that have become completely enamored with what they hear and what they see, right? A lot of kids I went to school with, they grew up on NWA, right? White kids, they know every word. They know more stuff than I do, right? It became the soundtrack of their life. And it baffled me, because I'm like, but you really didn't have to experience that. You didn't have to really grow up with. And then I started to understand that, again, there was a pure entertainment value in this. And for them, it was opposite, or negative aspiration that drew them into this, right? Where they, it became something that they wanted to channel, because it was so powerful, You know,
And, and that led to the
and
United and that led to the United States government putting a censorship on music. Or when you see
that's
the
right.
explicit
That's right.
contents on there, it's because they
Hmm.
did not want their children. And it's amazing when you put a message to a beat, how it affects someone, because what happens
Hmm.
is it distorts their own reality and makes what they hear and what they feel in the heart, because rhythm starts from the heart and that becomes your
Hmm.
reality. So you get
Right.
suburban kids now being gangsters.
Right. You know, and guess what? We didn't we had no idea this was going on until we actually went to a concert. And you go to a concert and you look in the audience and you like, there's more white kids here than black kids,
True
right?
that.
They, and they all here to see this. That's when the light bulb goes off in everyone's head, sitting in these boardrooms and you name it, and they're like, well, hell, we might as well capitalize on this because you ain't keeping it out of, little Timmy's house. It's going to get in there somehow. He going to sneak it in, or little, Susie, she's going to get it. It's okay. So what becomes the antidote for that is now you have it. Now it's big business, right? We move into the 90s where now you have the companies that their whole real power, the Sonys, the Warner Musics, the Universals, the
Pepsi
big ones
Cola,
now. That's
Pepsi
right.
Cola, McDonald's,
Uh-huh.
Walmart,
All
Walmart.
of these, right. Everybody now wants a piece of this thing. And what we did, right? And I'm going to sort of stop it right here just to give you an example of something that I think, this becomes the point where I kind of look at other genres of music. For example, I take country, right? I'm doing things in the country music space, and over the last really like 4 or 5 years, I've been actively involved in that genre. And the one thing that I will say, country. So for those that are watching, the two right now, currently in 2025, the two fastest growing genres of music are country in the United States of America are country and Latin music. It's not by accident. If you think if you look at these brands of music, right, they did a very good job of keeping out who they wanted to keep out. Now, with Latin music, it's almost by default because most, brothers don't speak Spanish, right? So, and a lot of people don't. But country, and when I say I take off my hat and I applaud them, is what we should have did in hip hop. Is we should have kept the doors locked a little tighter. It's just now in 2025 that you're really seeing the emergence of black country artists, right? But they've been around the whole time, right? But Nashville and places where the music reside, they weren't willing to just let anybody come in. You had to be extraordinary. And even to now, it's still kind of like you got to be extraordinary to get into country. Like with Latin, reggaeton, right? Again, almost by default, it's like it is what it is, but they remain self-contained. They never looked for approval from us or some group of people and they came and, hey, we'll do this. No, we're okay. Right. We want to keep this thing to us.
Isn't that the same thing that happened to Run DMC when they walked this way, when they crossed over?
So, so it's debatable. Yeah. Like with Run DMC and Aerosmith, right? That was a big leap for rap music, for rappers, and for hip hop. We still do applaud Run DMC for that. What it showed was that, again, it goes back to how powerful this music was, is that you could almost pair it with anything. It was the first time anybody'd seen anything like that, had witnessed that, where, you don't see rock going and doing something. I mean, you see it now, but back then you didn't see,
It played in our
rock,
neighborhoods.
right. To the point where brothers didn't know who Aerosmith was until that song.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it all the way 100 with you. You know, we might have known subconsciously, oh yeah, I think that's them dudes from Boston, or I know a song or two, but
Yeah.
no one paid attention. No one. And see, let's go if we dive a little further into that. That collaboration happens because of one Rick Rubin, right? And Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, they ran Def Jam together. And Rick Rubin, who was white, recognized the power in what he had, right? Rick Rubin is responsible for artists like the Beastie Boys, right? Who, by the way, were the first white rap group that, brothers and sisters from the neighborhood, we rocked with them. We liked the Beastie Boys, but that's because of what they were pure to us. They came from, these were three white guys from Queens. And we had seen it before, but we were like, yo, they represent what we do pretty well. But they had the aesthetic too, right? They came from they came from where they needed to come from, right? They weren't just plucked out of the suburbs. No, they
came from the hood.
That's right. So now you're starting to see again the diversity, and again, I go out. You're gonna hear this word a lot. The power and what this medium it had the ability to sell product. It had the ability to tell stories. It had the ability to bring two worlds together, right? Rock, rap, and create something beautiful. Walk This Way is still one of the top records when it comes to that. So we didn't know what we had, and if had we known, things might be different. So now picking up what we left off before in this sort of here comes the gangster rap era, what most describe it as. The country, the one thing you have to respect about that period of time is that the country was becoming a lot. It was a different place, politically, how things were structured. You're talking about now, you bringing in, this is, Ronald Reagan, the Reagan era, and getting into the Clinton era, and you're talking about things like the 3-strike rule being implemented. Young brothers that are facing a totally different set of circumstances than where the story originally started, which was New York City, right? New York, the Bronx, Brooklyn. It filtered into other places, Philadelphia, but it didn't get it didn't go much further. Yeah, we didn't know this was going to work, right? But now you got some brothers out on the West Coast who really got something to say. And this is the only way they knew how to say it. And for them, again, it wasn't designed to say, we going to say this and make $1 million. That's why I respect NWA, because they did it with the same premonitions that we had over here, which was, I don't know if it's going to work, but something got to be said. And I don't care if we make 1 penny, we just want our voice to get heard. Right. That's it. The era of that, again, the authenticity in the artist has left, because now you don't have artists today that's like, I'm going to say X, Y, Z because I want my voice to get heard. Is I'm going to say this, so I hope I could get that Lamborghini in like 6 months. You know what I'm saying? It's along those lines.
So Aaron, let me say, since there are a select welcome group of Black artists that are going to country music, is country music welcoming in or embracing the negative aspects of it, of our music today? I mean, you say that they are setting up, and are our artists realizing, because of the lack of originality, the lack of diversity within our music industry, the lack of equity in the music industry, and they're going through, because everyone wants to own their own masters. Is country saying, well, we'll accept this, but we won't accept this. We'll accept you, but we won't accept them. I mean, how's that conversation going on in the music business? How do you navigate?
Yeah. That is an excellent question, Kevin. To start, you know, I've dealt with Nashville quite a lot over the years, and I have an artist out in Vegas, a country artist out in Vegas, um, John Widowmaker, by the way, if anybody wants to go check him out, he's amazing. And I work with several others, right? So I think I have a little bit, room to speak on this subject. And by the way, my artist that I work with, he's white. He's not black. But anyway, we can
That
get
doesn't
into
make
that.
a difference. We listen to music. I don't care about that.
Right. But to answer the question about where is country music as a whole as it relates to the emergence of black artists, and I would say that there seems to be a there seems to be more willingness to give them an opportunity than it was, years ago, right? It seems like the idea now is more so catered around it being a real, having real talent, and not necessarily looking to fabricate your path in. In other words, sort of the same way that we channeled those artists that emerged within the black space or within hip hop that didn't look like us. It's like, okay, if you want to do this, then you absolutely have to be 100. You gotta, you can't fake it. You can't do anything that's going to make us look bad, right? And it feels like as long as that's the path in, there is a willingness. Those artists do get, for the most part, a fair shot, but there's still a ton of work that has to be done, and it's with the audience. The audience now. I think, we're going. There's going to have to be your own black collective, right?
All right.
Of marketing attempts and shows and venues and that really support it. I don't think, but I think your country music artists are some of the country music fans are some of the most honest and purest fans out there right now, because again, if it's good, they're like, all right.
Cool. Something, I'm going to tell you, I agree with you. Recently I started watching the country music awards, and I like the fact that they don't come up and they got $3 million worth of chains down there. There's not Lamborghinis parked in there. Not saying that there's not, but they drive in the pickup trucks. They come in their jeans and their cowboy hats and whatever, and it's just like an outdoor concert at the American Music Awards.
Right.
And so, I'm hoping that this relationship between our artists and their artists becomes our artists, right? And the separation becomes unified. Because I'm a firm believer, in order for us to have equity in this country, opportunity has to be equal for all. It can't be one over another, and can't be one trying to preserve a certain ethnicity within this country. But there is a tide. And there is a poster child that we cannot ignore, and that's called AI. You and I had this conversation a couple of days ago about the way it's affecting music industry. And I know there are artists out there that are fearful and they don't like it. I have to listen to it myself. That I've gotten into going back, I grew up singing in groups and whatever. And as a solo artist or someone that just wants to write music, I am, with your help, and I will tell everyone, with Aaron's help, if you listen to any of my stuff, he has been teaching me how to write music. I wish I can go back. I'm too old to be singing in groups or whatever. But I also know that I'm a good storyteller, and I think my music lends itself to a lot of artists. If there's an Asian artist out there looking for some music, hit me up. I've got some things, and I want to know your feeling as someone that's at the top of the food chain in this business. AI is getting into the music business. Timberlake just signed a deal working with Sony Records that he has his first AI artist, different from
Mhm.
myself and me using the technology. His artist is strictly AI. Music is good. I know our young people, I've said this to you before, young people don't care who's singing it, but they can dance to a beat and it creates an emotion or expression. There's difference. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying it from the seat of a fan.
Sure.
But
Hmm.
you're at the top of the food chain in this business. How does the conversation with AI? Is it a welcome house guest or is it a visitor? Or does it become a permanent relationship and you have to become in sync with your current artist versus the ongoing technology? How does AI fit into the music business?
Yeah. Great question. Uh, Man, artificial intelligence in within the music space is such a um a dynamic thing. You know, it's it's one of those things that we all realize is probably not, you know, going anywhere. Anybody that's working in here, and we're trying to find ways to embrace it. It's not welcome by the creatives the way that, you know, one might think that it would be, right? Most of the creatives are what I'm sorry, most of the creatives um are, you know, it's one of those things, like the
It's
same way
sensitive. It's sensitive.
right, the same way it might affect everyday society, where it's like you you kind of view it as like, this thing might take my job, you know, this thing might put me out of, you know, business. um so the day in the life of a writer, right? And you know, and then we can look at the more so executive side of it, but as a writer, you you know, and I mean, you know, the music industry is founded on great writers, you know, who wrote great songs. And part of the reason why those songs, you know, hit home and resonate is because you kind of know who the writer was or is and everything like that. You know, Stevie Wonder, one of my favorite writers of all time. Um, Man, I couldn't imagine listening to a, you know, a Stevie Wonder song like this was written by AI, right? Um, no matter how good it is, because it's that overall connection that that you have with, you know, knowing that this is the person who is responsible. So in the day in the life of a songwriter, um, songwriters have it tough, right? So you wake up, you know, you this is all you have is your ideas, and you know, you get them down on paper, and you visualize who this, you know, who this song could be for, or you're directly working with someone. And I took you through, you know, what happens with us in Aaliyah,
Right.
where she really prides herself in, you know, being positioned right next to the to the performance. She's amazing because she can extrapolate that information out of, you know, whoever that, you know, that singer is, and, you know, how you feeling, what's going on with this, how are you, you know, where are you at now, what are some of the things that you think about, and what's going on in your life. And then it creates this, you know, this impactful record. You don't get that, you know, with something that's AI generated right now.
Now, let me ask you a question. Are you sure of that?
Sure.
Now, the
No,
reason
no,
why I
that's
say,
why I was
are
going to
you
go
sure
into it. Right.
that if you look at the way that We Are the World was put together, and I look at the
Hmm.
boss, nervous as hell, and Bob Dylan didn't feel like they fit in with all the other talent until Stevie and Michael sat down with them, whatever. And if you listen to it, you don't miss the fact that, you know, Bob Dylan didn't fit in with Michael Jackson or everyone else. He fit in with Michael Jackson. But if you look at the
Hmm.
fact that, I'm speaking to the artists themselves, you know, you never are ever going to take away using AI from an Aaliyah that sits down and works with the artist, whatever, because there's a different
Sure.
level of soul. If you do
Right.
not
Right.
song has been assisted with AI, you don't know because technically, every artist has used AI and don't even know it. If you've got a sound engineer sitting up there, enhancing your voice, blending everything together, and whatever, that's all AI is doing. It's simplified. And I said this to you before. You think about it, how many producers and corporations have paid for studio time because the author or an artist was hungover, didn't show up, couldn't play, couldn't produce, lost his voice, too sick, or whatever the case may be. All right. But the fact that the end user, the customer, all they hear is a words to a beat that creates an emotion from them. And when you turn around and a songwriter that normally could not get in front of you, that's learning how to be a great songwriter, does not know how to get in the business. I mean, you said it before. I can write a great song and you can present it to Beyonce, but Beyonce is going to ask a question: who is this guy? Where's he done? Whatever. No matter how great the song is, they're going to pass on me because I'm not an established artist. But now there's a whole other avenue for revenue, and which is the reason why Timbaland went to Japan or China to do it, because there's a lot more of those people out there listening to music than it is in the North American industry. The same way industry, they make their money overseas, not in North American. You know, we're just a big show here. So if I write a great song and I can sing and I can produce it and whatever, it's still the benefit of the artist is that now you've got traction and momentum as a business person, and you as a producer, you're making a ton of money over here in the European market, and you've got an artist that now has a new hit song that's worldwide, that now you sell more concert tickets. They're always, you know that the song is only 3 minutes long, but when you go to a concert, people sing for 5 minutes singing the same song.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, those are all valid points. It really is gonna, I think, come down to how people use it. You know, how someone creative use it. Meaning, there's a, you know, what I thought was really cool about AI the first time I witnessed it in person was actually through a writer, who came up with the idea that he would write reference songs for he would write reference songs for other artists. The difficulty was he couldn't mimic, you know, like, okay, if you write something for Rihanna, you know, he couldn't mimic how she would sound, you know, prior to, right? So it's like you're submitting songs to, you know, whoever, right, to some A&R, and you're saying, hey, I wrote this for Rihanna. And a lot of A&Rs are not, you know, like you really gotta, you close your eyes and you try to think, okay, how would Rihanna sound on that? Right? How would it sound if she was on this? And it's almost impossible because you hear 1,000 songs a day, right? You're trying to, like, okay, all right, let me see. And so this one writer, his name was Ghostwriter, oddly enough, he got his hands on some technology and he was able to actually, you know, record himself, and then within the mixing process, you know, use the AI portion of this, mimic his vocals to make them sound like whoever it was he was trying to submit records to. That grew from being able just to a submission process to now they're actually being this sort of, you know, it became a like, there's a profit, there's a market for this, right? You know, you could now do things, you know, I could go off and just make a Drake record, and I'm not Drake, but it sounds like Drake. And if I write it in a certain way, maybe people think it's Drake. Well, that got shut down pretty fast, right? But now it's open source, and it only took a year for that to happen. And by open source, I mean, you know, it became anyone can do it. You know, anyone can use this. And I think if it's not abused, if it's done in a certain way where, again, it keeps the integrity of the music intact, I don't have a problem with it. I don't think anybody.
I'm glad you said it and you phrased it or prefaced it that way, because you said this the same way with country music and R&B and soul and hip hop artists going through. I think the responsibility of those like Timberland and yourself that are established in it, that are protecting your existing artists and welcoming in this new, you need to set a line, draw a line in the sand and said, this is going to become the standard of the people that are setting the standards. And you guys need to all mutually agree so everyone benefits, because what will happen if you guys do not set a standard within yourself and agree to it because it's profitable that way, what will happen is AI will eventually make all of you disappear. I mean, that's just my feeling, for the simple fact. And the reason why I say this, you know, when you talk about the flavor of artists writing songs and using AI to sell to other artists, Mariah Carey, every Christmas, has one of the most popular Christmas songs that have ever been played in history. Most of my people hate the song when you hear her sing it, but she makes an extra $3 million or $10 million a year on the re-recording and the re-release and the rights of that song. She did not write it, but she sung it. When you hear artists do Gladys Knight or the Temptations, they make it their own. We still listen to it as if we were listening to Temptations and whatever, Gladys Knight, and we enjoy the music. Our consumer is very savvy right now. They want to be entertained. All right. The entertainment aspect of it is always going to be there with the music. So instead of trying to squash it, embrace it and find a way for the two to work together to where it is meaningful and profitable to everyone. I may be just talking out the side of my head because I don't know anything.
No, I think you have to open up a market for it, you know, which is starting to happen. You know, I think you have to start to really create, you know, an actual place for it. And the one thing that I will give Timberland some credit towards or whatever is that, you know, he's branded this thing called A-pop, right? Wise, you know, because he says, okay, you know, I'm doing, you know, it's like AI for the K-pop or AI for Asian, you know, market, whatever. And I think because what you touched on is exactly it. The audience is a bit more savvy, you know, they're intelligent. And I've heard some really, really interesting ideas for AI that I'm just like, whoa, like I would kind of love to see that. Like one of the things I heard, and it's actually, you know, being done to some degree, you know, they haven't really pushed it out, is taking your legacy artists or artists who are no longer with us, right? And creating, you know, AI experiences, right? From people that are really good at AI, right? So in other words, like not necessarily trying to fool people to say, oh, this is here's an unreleased Michael Jackson song that came out in '84, but he was sick that day, so he couldn't, you know. No, like it's just like it's your own, you know, it becomes your own creativity towards, you know, keeping a legacy, you know, out front, keeping, things.
I'm going to tell you that works. I flew from Philadelphia to Las Vegas to see, because Michael Jackson was on the list of entertainers I wanted to see. And Prince, I saw him before he died. And Michael happened to die before his tour started. But I flew all the way to Vegas, rented a penthouse in a nice hotel there, ate there, put you know, money into the economy, and went to go see the one. And after 2 or 3 minutes of watching this AI generated Michael Jackson, I thought I was actually watching Michael Jackson. So it's amazing the way the human mind works when it wants to relax and be entertained. So this is coming. And my suggestion would be, even to you as a friend, instead of watching the wave come in, is to catch the wave. Let Timberland go out there and open all the doors, and you create a space in there and develop it, because you will have talent. You'll be surprised on how many unknown writers out there that are learning how to write music, that can put music together. You may not be 100% sold on the song, but you do know, you talk about this all the time. You said this about one of my songs. If you can put the hook early on in this, I think you got a hit. Now, the problem is because I'm a nobody, no one's going to give me a chance
You're
unless
not a
somebody gives me a
nobody
chance.
yet.
Yeah, well, this is the way it works in
No,
the
I get what you.
industry
Yeah, yeah.
because of
But
the
see, Kevin, this
prejudice.
is no,
Go ahead.
no. But this is what I talk about. Where I think that I would love to see, and I don't know if they'll be looked at as subgenres or these sort of ancillary markets. But I what Timberland did, there's a part of it that I agree with. There's a part of it that I'm like on the fence about. As a lot of us are, because we're trying to see, okay, where does this go? But what you just talked about, okay, I just think we're going to get to the point sooner than later that there's going to be like AI art, like AI writers that are associated to AI artists. In other words, you, Kevin, Timberland created this sort of AI artist that's like an avatar almost, but it's she's a person, but she's AI. But like that's his, Mickey Mouse is AI, right? Like, artists, and it's generated through something else, but it's from the creation of someone else. You can almost say Mickey Mouse is like this sort of altered ego of his creator, Walt Disney. Behind closed doors, maybe Walt Disney was like that. But a lot of things, that the conceptually AI has been around forever.
It's been around for long.
Even
We're actually behind what's going on with the origin of AI. But I will tell you the answer to your question on how the public is going to receive it, because the American population and every single person in this world, they like a happy ending and they like a winner. The same way when the NFL went on strike, we watched the scrubs and said it was a subgenre of football. But then there were a lot of players when the NFL came back. Those players went from being nobodies off the street and whatever, and now they're NFL players. It's the same way of, you look at the fact that what's the two guys from Boston that did Good Will Hunting? Mac Damon and his other partner. No one knew them. They weren't established writers, and all of a sudden, their first screenplay they got Oscars for. The whole conversation of everything we're having is you create an opportunity where there's hope, and the people that are presented with that opportunity are the same. You tell me what's the difference between a number one artist that's making $10 million versus a number one writer that wrote a song that's making the same $10 million. Show me the difference when you make your deposit into your life.
Well, I would think that the artist that's making making the 10 million is I mean, there's not much of a difference, but I would think one is slightly more in a better opportunity than the other in order to do that.
The $10 million, Aaron, is the same. If I was an artist and I had only had one hit wonder, and there's many out there, and all of a sudden, Aaron, you wrote a song, and you could sing it and use AI to put your band in the background together and whatever, and I like the song, but I could sing the song better. Aaron, I'm going to call you and say, look, you can keep your master, but I want to sing the song. Because I'm already out there. Everything that we talked about as far as the lifestyle, the sponsorship, and whatever, I'm still going to get that. The writer that's normally sitting on his couch at his mother's couch is now have a home of his own. He's driving a new Escalator of his own and paying his bills. While you, being the star that you are, you're on the red carpet or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's an award for animated AI writers or whatever, and now he's being recognized. It's only a matter of time.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to say something, Kevin. That's pretty that'll probably be pretty. It's like the unpopular opinion amongst probably a lot of people getting into music, and it's controversial at the same time. But I've been through so many. I'm 20 plus years into this. I've lived through or been through several different eras of music. In the business. The one thing that I think a lot of people, no one will really say it. But you kind of get the sense that everyone like appreciated or might appreciate gatekeeping. It's like gatekeeping needs to come back to some degree. The horrible thing about gatekeeping is that it did exactly what it said. It kept out some very talented people. You know, some people might have careers right now if it wasn't for gatekeeping. I think the subject of AI correlates along the lines of gatekeeping in a sense, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier with that sort of crossroads in hip hop and Latin music and country. Whereas once you let everybody in, once everyone feels as though they can do it, that becomes the fear. You know, there was a true mystique to being an artist, to writing. Not everyone knew how to do it. That's where artist development came in, right? You couldn't just cut on your phone and just, I'ma sing, right? And in the early stages of that, there were individuals that were afraid to do that because it was so like, wow, like, you know, I don't have any real training in singing, so I'm putting myself on display. It can, you know, and it was like, that ain't what you did. Well, now it's like you turn on your phone and you go to whatever, Facebook, TikTok, you scrolling up, you gonna find somebody there that believes that, okay, I'm going to sing and I'm going to dance and I'm gonna do this. And it although, you know, it's such a double-edged sword, because it's like, at times I appreciate it. I'm starting to get to the point now where I don't appreciate it. And I feel like gatekeeping needs to come back. Gatekeeping needs to, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but there's so much out there that isn't good. And it's not because it's not good, it's because it has not been developed. It hasn't taken the, you know, again, there was such a thing called artist development, that as a songwriter or as an artist, whomever, you spent months before, because you could sing in your shower all day, right? And your family and friends could tell you, you the best thing since sliced bread. You sound amazing. You still weren't ready to be out there. And it was when the production companies came in, the record labels invested in people like us, or, you know, people that I associate with, to say, we know the talent is there, but he or she or they still need to be developed. And now the thing with AI or a lot of things is that it allows you to kind of accelerate or fast track your progress, and you skip steps along the way, because as a songwriter, you can develop behind, you know, just what you do. You write songs and you get better as you write them. You get better as you write them, right?
I agree.
That's understandable. The front-facing talent, for those that'll sing the song or whoever, there's not. This is why music, in my opinion, is where it is. Part of the reason why is because there's no artist development. These somebody made it okay to just, you know what? I could rap, I could sing, I could do whatever. So I'm gonna just take what I do and I'm gonna, you know, put it out there, and the audience, although they're and it's going to sound like a huge contradiction, there's a segment of the audience, I should say, that yes, they are savvy, they're smart, they understand things, but then there's a part of the audience that buys into stupidity, that buys into nonsense, that's there for that associates talent with nonsense, with garbage, with stupidity. And it's like, how do we reverse engineer that? Because
then what you have to do is get them unhooked. And I will tell you, the population that you are talking about, you can identify them. They show up every day. Watch someone walk down the street, they're face down, looking at their phones, whatever they're doing. They can't go to the gym and do their exercise because they got to scroll the social media. That's the population that AI and everyone is going after, the people that are hooked. And when you're hooked on that, the small population that are purists, the way that you're talking about, you know, are out there trying to be heard. But now they're a small crowd.
Right.
Right?
And
10,000 people shouting versus 100,000 people shouting. Who's going to be hurt?
the 100,000 people.
You're exactly right. So it's
Right.
one of those things that it's like, you said it yourself, we need, and this is a bet, your word is probably better than the word that I need. We need to find a way to synchronize the conversation we're having and the actions that follow, and try to predict what the fallout of all this is going to be in the entertainment world. And then we need to embrace it, but we do need control, because if it runs out of control and whatever, it's like polluting the ocean.
Right.
And now people are
I
going to
think
stop showing up at concerts and everything else.
I believe, and I think that the music industry itself, if there became this rush to sign, like, these viral things, these artists that, these true, every sense of the word, one hit wonders, right?
Well, you
50.
have to look at it like the boy bands. It's like once you had Boys to Men, then all of a sudden you had 98 Degrees. You had
Oh
this
God,
band,
yeah,
that band,
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the case may be.
Right.
Everyone wanted a boy band.
All right.
The same way that Motown existed. It was like, it took one step up from our neighborhood talent shows, and it became Motown. These are all the people that grew up with us that you had four-part harmony with, and now that you got solo artists, and you can hire studio people to bring background, and then you can hire people to do your background on tour. Very seldom do you have groups. I mean, you think about it. What happened to the Jacksons when Michael left? We can talk about this all day long. What happened to the Commodores when Lionel Richie left? We can talk about this all day long. What happened to the Supremes when Dinah Ross left? We can talk about it all day long. But, and that's what, when they talk about AI, is that if I'm the lead singer of AI, I don't leave, because I can always keep my band together.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
But
I think to put a bow on in the AI thing, or put a knot in it, whatever the term is, it's just that okay. It's I think, number one, it ain't going nowhere. It's here to stay. Just like every iteration of the music business, when some sort of new product, new technology, new way of doing things came along, it took us a while to really understand how to make it, fit into whatever we were doing musically. Auto-tune comes to mind, CDs come to mind. Everybody thought, like, oh my God, here comes the CDs. What happened to the cassette tapes? Streaming, this is, I think, the first time, though, Kevin, is that the thing that's scary about that in music and entertainment as a whole is that this is the first time something has been so open source that it's like anybody can use it. Not everybody needs to, and not everybody is going to be great at it, but it's there at your fingertips for you to use. And then the actual ways that you can publish it or get it out. It's like, are we adding more pollution to the water, or are we cleaning it up? And unfortunately, the way everyone, like you, Kevin, you have an honest usage of it, right? You're taking this and you're honing your craft with it. And I think that's the cool thing about AIs, because to me, it's almost like it should be this sort of training tool to prepare you, so that when you are when you sit down with, whoever, Beyonce, or, whatever name you want to throw out there, that it's almost like a simulation, right? It's like, before I'm a pilot, I hop into a simulation. I pretend to fly the plane, right? There's no harm in that. I'm learning my mistakes from the simulator.
Right.
And what would be great is if that everyone looked at AI and say, this is a way I can develop as an artist, as a writer, as whatever. Okay. And I think there are a group of people that see it that way, but then there's some people that look at it and say, how can I get rich with this? What can I do?
I'm glad you prefaced it that way, because, there needs to be a certain level of purist in there. You know, it's just like, you know, you've heard me sing out loud, and you've said I should do this and whatever the case may be, and I've sung in groups and so forth. And I do think it should have the human element to it. And
Right.
you know, my ultimate goal is, like I said, you know, I would love to have a recording artist sing my song and have it their way. But I do know I'm planning a cruise in 2026, and two of the house bands they both have songs of mine. I'm actually going to sing both of my songs on these cruises. I'm going to perform.
Mhm.
You know, I just had one of my songs for a race in Dallas, Texas, that I wrote the theme song for Junior's 5K race. He's Steve Harvey's host. I wrote that. I just
Okay.
did a birthday song for Joe Foster, the owner of Reeboks. I did that. I don't know
Okay.
if you've heard it, but I do think that it should not be 100% computer generated. I think there should be an element. And it's the same way that I call
Absolutely.
you and I say, "What do you think about this?" And you tell me what I
Right.
need to do and whatever. It's like me going to school learning how to write music, do music theory. There is a
Right.
formula
The,
to
the
writing
performance,
music.
the performance side, Kevin, I have no issues with, because again, going back to the story I said before about the writer I used to represent, who used it as a way to mimic the person he wanted to, pitch a song
Mhm.
to. Thought that was genius. I don't have an issue with that. When AI is allowed to do all the work on the
I
intellectual side, meaning, like, I say to you, Kevin, I'm like, Kevin, if you I'm jumping around right now, but to give you an example, I turned down a bunch of songs recently from a writer over in Switzerland. By nature, he's a classically trained pianist by nature. He sang in the opera. He's amazing when it comes to that. He got a hold of AI, right? And one day I get we would contact. He's a really good guy, but I get a thing on WhatsApp, because he would send me all of his songs via WhatsApp, and I get this, like 5-6 songs, and I'm listening, and some of them are like, some of them are rap. So it's like a Christmas song, and it's like, it's like, and I'm like, who is this from? Because I'm just sort of like blindly, and I'm like, and it turns out it's the guy from Switzerland. And I called him and I said, "Is this your stuff? Like, who did you get these songs from?" Because I'm not you. He's, "Oh, no. I'm using AI now to do this and the brand." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm gonna reject these songs. And the reason is, I want you, if you're going to use AI, great, but don't use it to like hack into
Hit
another
you.
genre that you know nothing
Yeah.
about, right? You don't rap. You don't come. He's like, "Oh, I did a rap one. Tell me if no, because it's okay to use it, but again, to sort of like, well, I'm going to allow this machine to write something about oppression, right? I can't, that
I
now
totally
we're
I
right
totally get
now,
it.
but
And I will say this, we can talk about this for 2 more hours and so
yeah,
forth, but you know, we've covered a lot. We've talked about the disparity with our black artists. There is a
mm-hmm,
system that's in play, and we have to be honest. I'm a firm believer, if you're guilty, you should pay the crime, but if you're a perpetrator, you should suffer the same plight as the person that's being convicted. But we need to be fair. We need to support our musical community, not
mm-hmm,
only as artists, but we also as consumers. We need to support that that group, that band, that artist, and so forth, because that's how we make our livelihood. But we also have to protect the music and the culture and the impact, and be responsible. Be
right,
responsible
right,
for what we're putting out there and the message we're sending to our kids, because our
mm-hmm,
children, as well as the young children, because more children are having children without knowing their history or applying or being connected to a culture, and they're raising kids without any history. And if this music is going to be the format of what's going to mold them and affect them emotionally and physically, we need to be responsible. We need gatekeepers. I'll
so
be honest with you. I totally agree with
yeah,
you. I also think that we should go back to what the country music has been and is that we're looking for purists in the business. We need to have real songwriters, real singers,
Yes, absolutely,
and do the
absolutely.
business.
There's something. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. I'll
And
jump in after that.
and the other thing is, I have nothing wrong with monetizing your brand, but I don't think that the people that originated this music industry were concerned about the dollars and cents at the end of the day. They were more concerned about the message. And there has to be a message within our music. There has to be a purpose. The reason why we hold someone's hand and
We
we
got to
sing a
get back
song
to
to
that.
them, we got to get back to that.
We got to
If
get back to that.
we're gonna tell the story of our community and the struggle, we got to deliver a message that can be heard instead of being distracted from the message that we're trying to send. If that makes sense.
So, oh, it does. I want to, I know we're coming to the end. That there's two things that, I just, maybe one or two things that I do want to touch on that you kind of threw out there in the early beginning. And what you're seeing, I mean, we can take a look at P. Diddy, and whoever else, and that it sort of kind of comes full circle to how we started, right? Because again, I believe in now, and probably, Kevin, you're going to be able to find somebody out there that you can have on this podcast that is more locked in with universal theory about how the universe plays a role in this, and the stars and da 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 da, right?
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give you, what I think, when you create something that's so powerful that we created, that took years and years and years to create, wasn't overnight. And it reaches to the point where the intentions of it are now, it's almost a weapon. It can be used as so many things. Our music is so powerful. It's more powerful than any other brand of music out there. You'll never get me to
Totally
buy
agree.
into anything different.
Totally
Right.
agree.
I've watched it impact young to old. I've watched, as we talked about, young white kids who, for whatever God's reason, wanted somehow to be a part of this, right? I've gone to concerts where the front row is all $1,000 seats, and it ain't us up there paying that to go see somebody who comes from a place that you're not in, a neighborhood you're not from, right? It's such a powerful thing that you have to be careful once you get to that level where you have that power, because there are those that don't want you to have that power. And I also think that the low vibrations now that exist in music, the things that you go to certain, you go to a club, let's say. I've been there, and all night what's being fed to you is, really low vibration type of music, murder, death, kill, right? Or things that don't necessarily fit into how, a society should move, right? You being fed this. And when you are the one that is producing that sort of music, you're putting that out. And remember, unlike the pioneers before you that did that because it wasn't about a monetary gain, it was about this needs to be said. You doing that, you got to be careful. Words have power. I remember talking with Snoop Dogg one day, and he was telling me about me and them. It was a group of us, but he was talking about his years at Death Row. And that was a record label for those that, may not know. He was signed to a record label called Death Row. And, you know, he went on trial for murder. It was crazy. You know, go look up Death Row. Anyway, he said, I realized that it wasn't us. It was our pen. It was the stuff we was writing and that we would broadcast to the world. And that I don't know if it's because now where we are as a society, or again, going back to universal law and theory and all that type of stuff, that there's so much that's out there now that that what's coming back, what the universe is giving back to us is what we've pushed out. And when you're someone who has attached yourself to this thing called rap music or hip hop, now you got to be really careful, because it's powerful. Words have power. Our words have more power than anything, I believe, because we, you know, when you listen to a rap song, rap music, whatever, there's poetry from end to end. It's not like, you know, it's not like a Carole King record. It's too late, baby. No, it's just too late. Right. No, it's not that repetitive. It's so much that's in there.
It's a story that's being told.
It's a story that's being told, but it's powerful. It's almost like sorcery in a way, because you can speak things into existence through hip hop. I truly believe that. I think some of these guys that are in trouble, stay with me now, Kevin, because we coming to them, but I want the audience to hear this. I think some of these guys that are in trouble, and it's just not just hip hop, but I'm talking about, like, you know, whatever. You know, we'll save Cosby for something else. And I'm not talking about just the big name artists, you know, the big name entertainers. I'm speaking of whoever. You speak things into existence.
Right.
You know, Tupac, who I love and adore, I think he was great. He talked about death a lot. A lot.
What you focus on becomes your reality.
Right. And I don't think anyone really understood the power of you know, these words. You know, like we now get, you know, we don't got time, but I would take it back to our ancestors, but I'm not going to do that on this one. We'll pick it up. But it's how they communicated. And when our music became aspirational, we were a stronger people. We were better. When we talked about education, when we talked about, you know, uplifting our communities, cleaning up the streets, we, you know, there was still obviously problems that existed, but we aspired to be better, and it led to better things. And then the idea of, you know, the money and the fame and the reputation and those things started to, this is why I say gatekeeping, because people got in it for the wrong reason, and they polluted what was once like just pure. And it's like now when you say these things, I'm always curious. You know, I used to deal with any kind of writer. You know, I was once a part. That's what I'm saying, Kevin. We could have, it's probably another conversation. I fed that system to some degree, because I used to deal with guys that, you know, I believe that that's what people wanted, right? I would operate off that premise, like, okay, yeah, go ahead, say the N-word 30 times for all I care. You know, we got a hit, you know, whatever. But I started to see how it impacted me, how it impacted people, not just the N-word, but just like what it was about. And I started to really care about these young brothers. It's like, yo, okay, y'all starting to die over this now. Like we got to start checking what was really, you know, everything. Too many of y'all getting in this for the wrong reason. So I just say that to say, Kev, like, you know, when I look at whether it be, you know, Diddy, R. Kelly, or, you know, there's so many that I can
Young
go
and all these other people.
Right. There's a common denominator, man. It's your words. You know, it's like, yo, you know, you manifest, you opened up some stuff that, you know, from somewhere else that has found its way, and it got to you, right? It's the evils in some of it. And you've got to attempt to make it right, or, you know, whatever. And as it goes for our counterparts, you know, and we can get into this later, there's protection. They do the same thing. It's done differently. I could give you the ways, but they channel through us.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. So, like I said, from our listeners, not my listeners, our listeners, the reason why I wanted to share this conversation with you, because it was personal. This is conversation that you normally do not hear when you have a industry exec have an open and honest conversation and allow himself to be vulnerable about a situation. Love the music industry. I grew up around it. A lot of my good friends, I grew up in the neighborhood, Ohio Players, Lakeside, Zap, all those places,
Yeah.
people, Gladys Knight,
Awesome.
members of the Temptations, the Spinners, the OJs. I've been around them all of my life. I'm lucky enough to have a good friend. Why I'm on that next step of my journey, that's shepherding and being honest with my music, which I take and you grow. But we as consumers, as responsible brothers and sisters, as responsible aunts and uncles, grandmothers and grandfathers, friends, coaches, mentors, brothers and sisters, moms and dads, we have to be the gatekeepers of where this is going. All right.
Yeah.
We have to
Yep.
create an industry that provides opportunity for those that are worthy of the opportunity itself. And we have to shepherd and protect the brand itself. I mean, being a Black person is the most profitable brand on this country, in this world,
Really is.
the most profitable. If you're honest, we built it. Our ancestors built it. But the thing
That's
is,
right.
because of commercialism and sensationalism and any other ism that we can look at, we've been blinded by the shiny things in life. And once we return back to what the purpose is, the reason why we sat in grandma's basement, the garage, and sung songs is because we love the music. We had a story to be told. We shared love. We shared experiences. We shared hardships, and we shared our dreams all through our music. And that's what we got to return to. So with that said,
Yep.
and I'm glad you admitted that not only where you are right now, is that you're going back and you're holding yourself accountable for being part of the system itself. Because many people will say, well, where were you at when and they'll listen to your music and try to condemn you. The thing is that we grow. In order for you to grow, you must make some mistakes. In order for you to have confidence, you must address your own anxiety. We all come from a place that we may not agree with and we may suffer with, but in order to move beyond, we've got to have a vehicle in order to be that catalyst or that area of transportation. And that could be our music, self-expression. And then you've got to forgive yourself and hold yourself accountable. If you're an artist today that have basically taken a shortcut to your success, please reevaluate and think about what you've done to someone's son or daughter. Reevaluate the reason why there's a pill that's being popped that wasn't prescribed to it is because you encouraged it and you beautified it. All right. The other thing is we have to learn from our mistakes. So we have got to unlearn some stuff. So there's a new world coming, and we can't hold on and hold ourselves prisoner and hostage to things that we didn't know now that we know better. And to exist, we have to show up more and we have to do more. But you said it before, and this was the key thing. You look at the fact that Deion Sanders, he's graduated all of his players, all with grade point averages, and have finished college. It's never been done before. And people with a low vibration were wishing him not great success. LeBron James sat there and defended the position of his son being able to play with him. But you have to look at the fact that every single other parent, when you talk about opening a door for your child that's not brown or dark skin or whatever, they call it nepotism. We crucify LeBron James for having a talented son and providing opportunity at his place of work. We've got to understand the power of our words. Our words are either going to build or they're going to destroy something. This conversation that we've had today between two brothers, two friends, two people that cherish and respect a genre that needs to be respected and protected. This is the foundation of what's yet to come. And if you don't realize that every time anything happens that's ever going to be built, it's one brick at a time. And if you're bringing a brick and you build a strong foundation, then the music industry and people like yourself will continue to exist. The doors were open for other people to have an opportunity. So, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing. This was a great conversation. And to my listeners,
Thank you. Yes.
We ran long because we had a conversation to be had. Listen to it in two parts if you want. Listen to it as a whole. Use this as a template when your unconscious mind is available to having good sense brought in, good information, and you make the choice. You'll either be part of the solution or you'll be part of the problem. Everything about life is about chance and choice. And if
That's
you
right.
want to get drugs off the street, quit glorifying it. If you want a woman to be respectful, quit calling people's mothers and daughters hoes and bitches or whatever the case may be. If you want to stop glorifying violence, stop putting it in your movies and in your entertainment. The only way it's going to stop is that if you watch videos all day long and it's violence, whatever, it makes it easy for you to perpetuate what you've already envisioned and not realize the consequences. And not saying all these artists are totally innocent, but there is a system that educated them that this is part of the lifestyle, and it's not.
Right.
All right. So with that said, Aaron, again, thank you. I tell people find 1,000 ways to be kind to someone. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for educating me. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being a stand-up husband and father. Thank you for being an example to your community and to your business, to your culture. I thank you 1,000 times. And to my listeners, you may not agree with everything that either one of us says, and we're not asking you to agree, but what we are asking you to do is listen. If you like what you heard, go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. I want you to share this story. I can care less if you subscribe or like, but share this story. There's a lot of opportunity to be had going forward in this. If you want to be a guest and you want to come over here and talk about this, this is a positive platform. We want to promote people that have stories to be told. So go to www.rmkproduction.org. Fill out the information sheet on there. I'll be more than happy to contact you. And the last thing that I will say, my grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life, like my guest today, that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll fade to black and we're out. Thank you, Mr. Aaron Eubanks.
Thank you.